Climate change is a topic that is increasingly being discussed. As the changes in the world around us become more and more apparent, from unpredictable weather patterns to shifts in agriculture, it's clear that the planet is undergoing significant transformations. While some may think that climate change is a distant problem to be worried about later, the effects are already being felt today due to human activities. Climate change impacts everyone, from the weather we experience daily to the food we consume and the ecosystems that we rely on. It affects ecosystems globally, it triggers natural disasters, health issues, and alters the environment. But the question does remain, are we truly aware of how human actions are accelerating this crisis? In this presentation, I will discuss the undeniable reality of climate change, its devastating effects on ecosystems, and the urgent need for global action to mitigate these impacts. To begin, we'll explore the scientific consensus on climate change, then examine its role in driving catastrophic events like wildfires, and finally, we will analyze the profound effects of climate change on critical ecosystem services that we depend on. As someone who has extensively studied the science of climate change and analyzed a wide range of research on its environmental, social, and economic impacts, I feel confident in addressing this critical issue. Over the years, I have reviewed peer-reviewed studies, reports from global climate change organizations such as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and other environmental sources. I am well aware of the urgent need for comprehensive action to address the accelerating climate crisis. My research into the various aspects of climate change, from its causes to its effects, and the solutions being proposed by scientists and policymakers, has provided me with a solid understanding of the complexities of this issue. This research and first-hand knowledge form the foundation of my ability to speak about climate change and its growing consequences. Today, I'm going to present evidence from credible sources that highlight the need for immediate action and how human behavior is contributing to the ongoing environmental crisis. With this foundational understanding of the topic, let's move on to discussing some key terms and concepts that are critical to understanding the reality of climate change. First, I'm going to talk about my definition stock issue. Firstly, climate change. Climate change refers to long-term changes in the average weather patterns on Earth, including both natural and human-induced changes. According to the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, climate change is driven by an increase in greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide due to human activities such as burning fossil fuels. Global warming. Global warming is a specific aspect of climate change that focuses on the rise in Earth's average surface temperature, primarily caused by increased levels of greenhouse gases. The greenhouse effect. This natural phenomenon is intensified by human activities, leading to a rise in Earth's temperatures. The greenhouse effect occurs when gases in Earth's atmosphere trap heat, preventing it from escaping back into space. Next, we're going to talk about my threshold stock issue. Number 1, boundaries. Focus on human-influenced climate change. In this argument, I will focus specifically on the human-driven causes of climate change, such as the burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial agriculture. Scope of effects. While climate change affects the entire planet, I will address its specific impacts on extreme weather events, ecosystem services, and biodiversity loss. So, what is wrong? According to Kevin E. Trenberth, climate change caused by human activities is happening, and it already has major consequences, including more frequent extreme weather events and shifting global weather patterns. These extreme weather events include hurricanes, droughts, heat waves, floods, which are becoming more severe and more frequent due to climate change. Human negligence and inaction. Despite the overwhelming scientific consensus on climate change, there remains significant inaction or delayed responses from both governments and corporations. As noted in a 2021 report by the IPCC, humanity's failure to limit global temperature rise to below 1.5 Celsius is causing severe, irreversible changes to ecosystems and human systems globally. Next, we're going to talk about my application stock issue. So the current system, how the problem is addressed right now. We're going to talk about ineffective policies. While countries have made commitments to reduce carbon emissions through agreements like the Paris Climate Agreement, many are falling short in meeting these goals. According to the United Nations 2023, only a handful of countries are on track to meet their climate pledges, while others have increased emissions over the last decade. Public awareness and education. Many individuals remain unaware of the urgent need for climate action, due in part to a lack of widespread education and government action. Public outreach is critical to drive the necessary change. The global issue, how other nations are dealing with the problem. So in some countries, particularly in Europe, they have already implemented aggressive carbon reduction policies. So, for example, several European Union countries are pushing for carbon neutral economies by 2050. And the role of the United States, as one of the largest contributors to global emissions, the United States must take more significant actions to meet global climate targets. For instance, the U.S. must rejoin the Paris Agreement and set more ambitious climate policies. The opposition. Adaptation to climate change. Some argue that humanity can adapt to climate change by investing in resilient infrastructure or technologies. However, this approach does not address the root causes and does not account for the displacement of vulnerable populations. While green technologies may foster economic growth, the argument that climate change can be beneficial in some sectors fails to acknowledge the long-term environmental consequences of the loss of biodiversity. The plan for change. Governments must enact policies to reduce carbon emissions significantly, such as carbon taxes, stricter emission standards, and investing in renewable energy infrastructure. Countries must work together to establish a global framework for climate action, ensuring that the most vulnerable nations receive support and that greenhouse gas emissions are reduced on a global scale. Here is a review of my main points. Climate change is a clear and present danger, and urgent action is necessary to address its impacts on the environmental ecosystems and future generations. My definitions are climate change driven by human activity is altering weather patterns and impacting ecosystems in ways that pose risks to life on Earth. Threshold. While the focus has been on human-induced climate change, the facts show that drastic measures are necessary to mitigate further damage. My application, we must adopt and enforce stricter climate policies, invest in green technologies, and work towards global cooperation to combat the climate crisis. Here is my call to action. Climate change is not an environmental issue. It's a crisis that requires immediate global action, whether through policy reform, individual action, or technological innovation. We must take responsibility now to protect the planet for future generations. Now, as you think about the future, remember that each choice, from how we use energy and the products we consume, plays a part in shaping the climate's future.